Hey everybody, Damage Dan here with the second episode of the Overdue. With the second episode of the Overdue review. In this episode, we're gonna take a look at Prince of Persia. Elika, seriously, your time will come. Hey, if you can't beat him, join him. Okay, Prince of Persia, not to be confused with Prince of Persia, or Prince of Persia, or Prince of Persia. Prince of Persia came out in 2008, and was made by the same guys who did Assassin's Creed. This particular iteration of Prince of Persia really takes a step back from the established franchise in terms of graphics and gameplay. It really is a completely different game from the previous versions. You start the game wandering the desert in search of your donkey, who was loaded down with gold from your previous exploits, which throughout the campaign remain pretty shady at best. Before you know it, a princess falls into your arms, and adventure ensues.
Hi.
The prince, who was already unhappy with his situation about his lost donkey, is now the caretaker of this princess, who seems to be on the run from her father. From the very beginning, the relationship between the princess and the prince is rough. To put it lightly, they don't like each other. Now, I don't want to give away too much of the plot, which is actually very interesting, so we'll kind of veer clear of those things. But let's talk about the graphics. These graphics are gorgeous. The developers didn't hold anything back in terms of color palette with this one. Neon greens to blues to pinks to purples to oranges, everything is utilized here in a very meaningful way. It's one thing to use color to make a game look exciting. It's another thing completely to use color as a subtle gameplay mechanic, cluing in the player as to what they need to do next. The movement and combat is so fluid and silky smooth, it's ridiculous. Leaping off of a platform into a wall running section, jumping from pole to pole, engaging an enemy in strategic swordplay, flying through the sky with magical powers, sliding down walls with your gauntlet, and then sliding down a slippery slope are all common occurrences, and once you get the hang of it and you pull off a really long chain of acrobatic escapades, you feel pretty awesome. Your objective throughout the entire game is to heal the land from the corruption. The corruption is spread to every fertile ground throughout the kingdom. You really get a sense of accomplishment every time you heal one of these grounds, and the cinematic effects are spectacular. The land changes from a dark, moody, brooding atmosphere to bright, colorful greens and blues of the Persian kingdom. As you progress through the story and collect light seeds, Elika unlocks special magical powers which allow her to access fertile grounds throughout the kingdom. Each time you unlock a magical power, you play a special level, which kinda teaches you how to use it. It's a really neat tutorial system which is both subtle and artistic. The voice acting in this game is almost the star of the show, and also one of the drawbacks. The reason I call it a drawback is that they're all optional. You can play through nearly the entire campaign and never once talk to Elika, except for the scripted cutscenes. They really flesh out the story, and without them, there isn't much meat on the bone.
Anything else you think you should be telling me?
You're an idiot.
One of my favorite things in this game, aside from the parkour elements, is the combat. It's very simple. You have a sword attack, a gauntlet attack, and an aerial attack. And that's it. They don't change throughout the entire campaign. But its simplicity is exquisite, and the ability to link together different attacks to form really long combos is awesome. Enemies spawn in swirling pillars of corruption. If you're quick enough, you can get to them before they spawn and slash at them with your sword, like this. Enemies are sparse throughout the levels. The real enemy is the level itself. Since the game is open world, depending on which fertile ground you take on first, different elemental traps will crop up throughout each level. Dodging these environmental traps takes skill and expert timing. There is some element of trial and error, but since the controls are so tight and responsive, I found it pretty rare when I had to redo a platforming section. If you play through the campaign and listen to all the optional dialogue, you'll really grow close to these characters, and even start to care about them. There are very few games out there that have ever actually evoked an emotional response from me. I played through Journey on the PlayStation 3, and I definitely felt something by the end of that game. I grew a real attachment to both my character and the person I was playing with, even though I didn't know who they were. Prince of Persia is another one of those games that, surprisingly enough, really struck a chord with me emotionally. And if you play this game, you might just end up feeling the same way. So that's it for Prince of Persia. Is there a game you've played that's really made you feel something? Leave it in the comments below. Next up is Darksiders on the Overdue review.